ETFs can be a great investment for just about anyone looking to invest and build wealth. But choosing the right ETFs can be a bit of a challenge, so let's get into my top 7 ETFs that you can buy right now and what could prove to be one of the best times to invest. Let's start with number 1 on this list, and that's VTI, Vanguard's Total Stock Market ETF. This ETF seeks to track the performance of the CRSP US Total Market Index. And the price of this ETF is $198.79. And depending on when you watch this, it could be up, it could be down. That's going to be the case for the rest of these ETFs in this video. The expense ratio of VTI is very low at 0.03%. So if you have $10,000 invested in VTI, the expense ratio is going to be just $3. VTI currently invests in 3,992 different stocks. The inception date of VTI is May 24, 2001. So this ETF has almost 22 years of history that we can go analyze and look at to see how it's done so far. Now, the 10-year average annual rate of return of VTI is 12.08%, and the average annual rate of return since its inception is 7.52%. Now, the top 10 holdings of VTI include Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet Class A stocks, Berkshire Hathaway, United Health, Johnson & Johnson, Alphabet again, but these are the Class C stocks, ExxonMobil, and JP Morgan & Chase. Next on this list is SCHD, Schwab's U.S. Dividend Equity ETF. This ETF seeks to track closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones U.S. Dividend 100 Index. This ETF is currently trading at $75.94. It has a very low expense ratio of 0.06%, so $10,000 invested in this ETF, you're only going to owe $6. It has 104 different holdings, different stocks. The inception date of this ETF is October 20, 2011. So a little bit over 11 years, almost 12 years of history that we can go analyze and look at. Now, the 10-year average annual rate of return is 13.73%, and the return since its inception is just a little bit higher at 13.82%. The top 10 holdings of this ETF include Broadcom, Verizon, Home Depot, Texas Instruments, Merck & Co., BlackRock, Cisco Systems, International Business Machines, Pepsi, and Coca-Cola. One important note, because this is a high dividend ETF, I did want to share that there is a dividend yield of 3.38%, which is pretty good to have in an ETF, especially a low cost ETF that you can buy that has a little bit of diversification with owning a little bit over 104 different stocks. So I like this for people who want to have an ETF that is going to provide a dividend that can also grow and that has a little bit of diversification with low fees. But do check with a financial professional before you start investing in this ETF or any of the other ETFs, because this is only for educational purposes only. Next on this list is VNQ. This is the Vanguard Real Estate ETF. This ETF invests in stocks issued by real estate investment trusts, REITs, companies that purchase office, buildings, hotels, and other real property. So for people who want to get into real estate but don't actually want to get involved with the physical buying, the physical selling of properties, you can buy an ETF that does that for you. And this ETF is great for that. Currently at $87.72, this ETF does have an expense ratio a little bit higher than the other ones at 0.12%. So for a $10,000 invested in this ETF, you would owe $12. Current holdings is 167. This ETF inception date is September 23rd, 2004. So there is a little bit of history with this ETF that you can continue to analyze and investigate and do your history on. The 10-year average annual rate of return of VNQ is 6.41%, and the average annual rate of return since inception is 7.43%. The top 10 holdings of VNQ include Vanguard Real Estate Index Fund, Institutional Institutional Plus Shares, Prologis, American Tower Corp, Equinix, Crown Castle, Public Storage, Realty Income, Simon Property Group, SBA Communications, and Welltower. Number 4 on this list is Vanguard Small Cap Value ETF. This ETF seeks to track the performance of the CRSP US Small Cap Value Index, which measures the investment return of small capitalization value stocks. Currently trading at $167.02, this ETF does have an expense ratio of 0.07%. So for $10,000 invested in this ETF, you would owe $7. This ETF invests in 862 stocks, and the inception date is January 26, 2004. The 10-year average annual rate of return is 10.27%, and the average annual rate of return since inception is 8.46%. The top 10 holdings of this ETF include IDEX Corp, Steel Dynamics, Atmos Energy, APA, Bunge Limited, Howmet Aerospace, Booz Allen Hamilton Holding Corp, First Horizon National Corp, Kimco Realty, and Gaming and Leisure Properties. Now, I do like this ETF because it's going to focus on the smaller companies, still big time companies. However, this is focused on the smaller cap value stocks, which you do miss in some of your ETFs like VTI and another one that I'm going to be sharing with you here in this video. Next up on this list is SCHY, Schwab's International Dividend Equity ETF. This investment seeks to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones International Dividend 100 Index, composed of high dividend yielding stocks issued by companies outside the United States. So those companies outside the United States that do provide a high dividend. The price of this ETF from Schwab is $23.88. The expense ratio is 0.14%. Now, this ETF currently holds 115 stocks. The inception date of this ETF is going to be the newest one on this list, and that's April 28th, 2021. So we don't have a 10-year average annual rate of return to go off of, but the return since inception is negative 3.24%. Unfortunately, this is an ETF that started in 2021, and since then, as we've seen, the market has gone down, but this could prove to be a good time to buy into this ETF because it being down since inception at minus 3.24%. Now, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the names of the top 10 holdings in this ETF, but I am going to show you on the screen, as you can see right there. Now, this ETF does provide a 4.67% dividend yield. Again, it is a fairly new ETF, so this could be a good time to potentially buy in because it is at a low price. And I would say that that 4.67% dividend yield is pretty attractive. Next up is an ETF that one member of the community brought to my attention, and it is the Vanguard Total World Stock ETF. This ETF invests in both foreign and US stocks. It seeks to track the performance of the FTSE Global All Cap Index, which covers both well-established and still developing markets. So this is an ETF. If you just want one ETF that's going to invest in US companies and international companies, well, this ETF could be for you. Currently trading at $91.08. This has an expense ratio that's pretty low at 0.07%. So $10,000 invested in this ETF, you'd have a $7 fee. This ETF has the most holdings of all of the ETFs on this list at 9,473. The inception date of this ETF is June 24, 2008. The 10-year average annual rate of return of this ETF is 8.14%, and the average rate of return since inception is 6.12%. The top 10 holdings of this ETF include Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet Class A, United Health, Johnson & Johnson, Alphabet Class C, Berkshire Hathaway, ExxonMobil, and JP Morgan Chase. Last but certainly not least is VOO, Vanguard's S&P 500 ETF. This ETF obviously invests in stocks in the S&P 500 index, representing 500 of the largest US companies. This ETF is currently trading at $363.78, the highest price of any of the ETFs on this list. It has a very low expense ratio of 0.03%, so $3 for every $10,000 that you invest. It currently holds a little over 500 stocks at 506. The inception date of this ETF is September 7th, 2010. The 10-year average annual rate of return of this ETF is 12.52%, and the average annual rate of return since inception is 12.92%. The top 10 holdings of this ETF are going to be very similar to VT and VTI, and that's going to be Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway, Alphabet Class A, United Health Group, Alphabet Class C, Johnson & Johnson, ExxonMobil, and JP Morgan & Chase. Now, whether you choose to invest in one or a combination of some of these ETFs is ultimately going to be your decision. But if you're interested in learning about a simple and basic 3-fund ETF portfolio that you can set up yourself with ease, check out the video on the screen right now, and I'll see you over there. Peace.